Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us today for Reopening Kensington, the COVID-19 guidance on Montgomery County's Phase 1 reopening of local businesses. My name is Connor Crimmins. I'll be your moderator for today's session. I am a council member with the Town of Kensington, and on behalf of the town and Mayor Tracy Furman, who is joining us today, I'd like to thank all of our local businesses who have signed on to join us and to ask questions of our panelists. Today we have Jerome Fletcher. Jerome is an Assistant Chief Administrative Officer within the Montgomery County Executive's Office, and Andrew Friedson, our District 1 County Council member, which covers the area of the Town of Kensington. So over the course of today's session, you can ask questions within the chat window, and I will take your questions and weave them into a conversation that we're going to have with Jerome and Andrew on what it means to enter Phase 1 and progress towards Phase 2 of reopening local businesses that have been either closed or under modified restrictions due to COVID-19. So to begin and to set the stage for everybody, at 6 a.m. on June 1st, Montgomery County entered Phase 1, meaning that some businesses and services could resume in a limited capacity. This obviously includes things like restaurants and salons and barbershops. And as those businesses reopen, there's an imperative that they follow the guidelines for the Opening Up America Again guidelines put out by the CDC. The state of Maryland has applied additional guidelines, and now as well, Montgomery County is applying guidelines. So what we'd like to do is begin our conversation with Jerome Fletcher and Andrew Friedson with the question that is on everybody's mind. Montgomery County is taking a more delayed transition to Phase 1 than the state of Maryland has, but as of June 1st, the county has entered Phase 1. And what I'd like to do is start with Councilmember Friedson. If you could discuss a little bit about the philosophy and the approach that the county is taking with regard to how it is making decisions for reopening businesses in Phase 1 and progressing towards Phase 2. So I want to welcome you for joining us. And Andrew, if you could take that question and jump right in.
We've been pushing to get the next phase information out, working with the executive branch on that. I'll let Jerome fill in more of the details there, but we had a conversation just earlier today on some of those particular elements. And, I think the council has tried to step up as much as we can to provide some level of support with Fed grants, the Public Health Emergency Grant Program, $25 million we've appropriated for that. Teleworking grant, we appropriated $1.5 million for that. I helped to spearhead both of those efforts, and working with colleagues and Jerome and the executive branch, a number of other different special appropriations during this time. And now we recognize, as we do a gradual reopening, that we're both following the public health guidance and working with businesses to try to provide support that is needed. We're looking at a number of other opportunities to be able to help and support. And I am here as your District 1 council member to be responsive and supportive, and work closely with the Town of Kensington on a regular basis to answer questions and to try to provide support for different constituent issues, working together as partners. And we're available to you as well. I'll put our contact information into the chat so folks can see that as well, and here to answer any questions as well. But just know that we appreciate the sacrifices that you're making, all the work that you are doing, the new normal that you're adjusting to, and here to support you in any way that we can, and any way that I can. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Andrew. All right, so at this time, I'm going to change the spotlight video over to Jerome Fletcher. Jerome, if you want to introduce yourself, and then when you're ready, I'm happy to push the screen of the reopening Montgomery County.
Okay, thank you, Connor. I appreciate it. So good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Jerome Fletcher. I'm an Assistant Chief Administrative Officer in the Office of the County Executive. And like Councilman Friedson stated, he was part of the very beginning of this process, and a lot of the conversation that extended from his office to our office. So we were very grateful and glad to have their cooperation on these programs that he mentioned that were put out to the public to help those in need. the recognition of the impact of this crisis on not only the world, but more specifically Montgomery County was recognized very early. And the programs that we have launched and administered, we are very happy with, but we do recognize in the same token that they do not cover everyone, they did not help everyone, and there's a lot of needs still remaining in the county. The program that we're talking about with the Public Health Emergency Grant Program, it actually covered losses that when this pandemic first began in March. So there's still April and May that people still have struggled with, and here we are in June where the struggle is still continuing based on how we are phasing our reopening. Our reopening is based on safety first. We are being led by our public health official, Dr. Travis Gales, and our emergency manager, Earl Stoddard, and they are speaking with the county executive quite frequently, as well as updating council quite frequently on where we stand with our metrics and how we can move closer from phase 1 to phase 2. The phase 1 guidelines that were eased on June the 1st, this past Monday, we are still looking at those numbers to figure out how can we get to phase 2. The way that we go from phase 1 to phase 2 is a very data-driven and scientific method. Our doctor is using the numbers that we have, and there are several different metrics that he's measuring, but overall, I think that he would say is that the county still needs to see a continual decline in the numbers that are of concern for 14 days in order for us to go from phase 1 to phase 2. And going from phase 1 to phase 2 is really based on the behavior of the public, making sure that we abide by the safety rules of social distancing as well as wearing masks, especially for the businesses that have been relaxed this week, but also for the ones who were in existence before this week. Phase 2 contains several activities that we are trying to get posted and put up for the public to consume. We do understand that if we are not going to put a date on when we're going from phase 1 to phase 2, that it's important to let people know what the activities are in phase 2 and phase 3. That way people can properly prepare. They need to make sure that their business is safe for themselves, their employees, as well as their customers. You know, this is going to be a learning curve. We are trying to learn from those jurisdictions and entities that have opened and are a little bit further forward than Montgomery County, and just making sure that we clearly understand, you know, why they're further along than we are. Our rate of cases and our testing capacity for a county of our size is something that has to be considered and compared when people are looking at us as why we are not doing some of the same things that our peer jurisdiction in Maryland are doing, as opposed to how we look at ourselves, which is we compare ourselves to Prince George's County in DC because we're all in that same area of the region right now that is experiencing very similar demographic experiences, because Montgomery County and Prince George's County, I believe, make up 50% of all the cases of deaths in Maryland. And it is truly tremendous when you see that we have the ability to flatten that curve and ensure that we protect people by just practicing safe measures. So thank you, Connor. I'll go to the website now and talk a few minutes about reopening Montgomery and what does this mean and where we're at and who does it apply to. When you actually go to the website, the first thing you're going to see are the different phase 1 categories. Connor, are you able to get there? You going to go there? I can share my screen, maybe. Okay, maybe I can't share my screen. Let's try this.
You get it, Jerome?
Yeah, it should be popping up right about now.
Perfect. Yep.
All right.
Perfect.
So when you go to our Reopening Montgomery webpage, this is where the most frequent and up-to-date information is going to live as we go from phase 1 to phase 2 to phase 3. The items that are here in phase 1 that we opened on June the 1st are specifically mentioned in this executive order right here that was passed. It was presented and passed late last week. If you were to click on it, you would see that it takes you straight to the executive order. This executive order is the most detailed information you're going to find that guided our reopening efforts. And that's the same information that you're going to see here. The business reopening requirements, that's important for us to not only know, but to put into practice and let others know. The business reopening requirements require you to say and show and display that you are taking the necessary safety precautions to keep everyone safe. The business owners, the actual employees, the actual customers coming to the business. We want you to actually download these requirements and print it and post it so that when people come to your establishment, they know that you have read and understand, and you give them a level of comfort. The one thing that the community has right now is a high level of fear, and that fear can be reduced by us letting them know that we're practicing safety at any and all costs. The frequently asked questions that you will see right here are ones that we have gathered over the course of maybe the last couple of days. Once people started to open, we tried to, answer as many questions as we could, but knowing that some of the questions repeated themselves, we thought it would be best to make sure that we put some FAQs out there. The FAQs will be updated on a fairly regular basis. So if you have not had a chance to visit that, please go visit that and see if some of the outstanding questions that you have, in addition to what we discussed today, could be answered there. Businesses also want to know, where are the resources for me to reopen? How do I figure out what I need to do in order to open safely? Here on this page, you will see a lot of information that we have for various businesses that actually tells you things that you can do. It's a lot of guidance, but as you can imagine, there's a lot of different areas in the business sector. So, please take the time to go through there and use that information as you can in order to answer some of your questions. Let me go back. Oops. Oh, man. Hold on one second. I'm sorry.
While Jerome is bringing that up, just two other things as a reminder. This session is being recorded, so if you want to come back and watch it later, we'll have it up. We'll share it with the council member's office as well as the Town of Kensington's website. And then additionally, as we move into the Q&A, if you're familiar with the Zoom platform and you want to raise your hand, I will moderate and work to get everybody's questions in. If you're not familiar with the Zoom, you can also just put something on chat, and I will help to kind of work the question and answer period, MC that, if you will, for Jerome and for the council member.
All right, thank you, Connor. So reopening contact information, we have an email address, the BizInfo COVID-19. That's right here. If you have a question that you need to submit that has not been answered, or you can't find the answer, we're going to try to help you get to the answer. As you can imagine, a lot of questions that we have been asked so far go back to the guidance of our public health official, Travis Gales, as well as our emergency recovery manager, Earl Stoddard. So we do have to go out and get some of that information because, again, everything is not known at this time, but we do our best in order to make sure that we can get you the right answer. When you look down here in reopening phase 1, these bullets and these actual different tabs allow you to explore things such as outdoor dining. What do I need to do? We are actually requiring those who are participating in outdoor dining, which is one of the restrictions that was eased on June the 1st, to actually register with us. And that registration is not meant to delay you or slow you down. You are actually registering while you are actually setting up and doing the outdoor dining. What we want to do is to make sure that we know where the different outdoor dining establishments are occurring so that we can go out and ensure that sidewalks are still walkable, that tables are properly spaced. And there's even conversation that we're having with different restaurants about exploring other adjacent space to them, and as well as across certain streets that are available through private businesses that aren't currently using them. So everyone's trying to be creative and flexible. The ambassadors who will be going through the community to monitor this sort of outdoor seating behavior are not coming through with a heavy hand. They are coming through to actually just ensure and be friendly and make sure that everyone practices everything I said earlier, such as wearing masks, social distancing is necessary so that we can remain as safe as possible and get to the next phase as quick as possible. Some of what you will also notice in this tab, as well as at the bottom of this web page, are certain checklists for the different areas, whether they're operational or implementation. Those are meant to help guide you. So help you answer your questions, to help you to make sure that, you know, when you have an establishment that you want to open, these are the guidelines that we're saying that you should be doing to adhere to do it the safest way possible. We do understand, and what I've heard from various business owners and business groups and support groups, is that there's a certain level of liability that comes with opening your business, and a lot of people are having concerns about whether they need to do temperature testing, and you know what happens if someone gets sick in their establishment. And you know, those particular guidelines and those what if scenarios, you know, I don't believe have been shared by whether it's the state or the higher level than the county for us to handle. So we are doing the best we can to sort of get that information and figure out the guidance that we can provide to the county overall as a whole. And as soon as we have that information, of course, we will pass it on. And at the bottom of the webpage, you will see the various reopening checklists and protective measures. I would encourage you all to go through these to see if they affect you and how that you can learn from them to guide your reopening process. I do want everyone to understand that, you know, reopening and the timeline of reopening is more of an art than a science. You know, there is a lot of data-driven decisions that are being made, but also being made by exercising certain levels of caution. And I'll give you an example. You know, opening the hair salons up for hair services and barbershop. You know, that was one where our public health official, you know, he really wavered on that one, because knowing that those services provide more intimate and hands-on contact in a closer proximity, you know, gave him some pause. But I'm glad that he did allow it to be reopened. I think we're doing well with it so far, and we look forward to expanding it. So this is all that I'll say about the webpage. I will say that we are also working on a 4Business podcast called Reopening Montgomery. We've recorded 2 episodes so far. We'll push that out to various membership groups into the community, and we're going to do some social media and a big communication on it, because what we're going to do there is we are going to update the community twice a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays, so that you don't have to wait for a week at a time in order to get information from the county. While there are still decisions being made every single day, that's never going to change. I think that we as a county can do better with communicating, providing information, and hoping to answer questions sooner rather than later. So Connor, I'll stop there and I'll answer any questions anyone may have. Well, I'll try to answer any questions.
Great. All right. If anybody has a question, I'm just taking a quick look. I don't see any hands raised yet or questions in the chat. Either way, anybody who would like to ask a question, please feel free to either type it into the chat window or raise your hand. I'm happy to call on you. I guess as we wait, I know there's a question, Jerome or Andrew, that has been asked to myself and to Mayor Furman, which is that the governor has announced that phase 2 is coming this weekend for the state. However, I haven't heard yet what's going to happen with phase 2 for the county. Can you recap the timeline for what's going to happen with Montgomery County businesses?
Yes, so Montgomery County is currently on, you know, a 2-week lag from when the governor is moving from his phase 1 to phase 2. Our decision to go from phase 1 to phase 2 will be a data-driven, science-based decision. Our public health official, Dr. Travis Gales, is monitoring the metrics that he is using to decide on how to get us safely from one phase to the next. So while we are not putting a time limit on when we will go from phase 1 to phase 2, we are evaluating factors, as well as we are we're seeing what our close jurisdictions around us are doing as well. Our goal is to put out as soon as we can. Ideally, earlier this week, it was today, and it may not be today, but we wanted to put out to you what activities would be included in phase 2 and phase 3. That's a big question that's out there as well. For instance, commercial office buildings. You know, we hear a lot about that, you know, almost every day, and they are included in our proposed phase 2 as of right now. Now, could that change? Sure. But, as of right now, they are included in there. We don't know when we will get to phase 2, but, we want people to start preparing as well as possible so that they can make sure they create a safe environment for everyone.
Thanks, Jerome. A question that came from the audience. Will the county provide to the public a list of the restaurants that have registered to open in phase 1?
I don't think we had planned on it. Why would we want to supply that information? Just to know where they can go to eat outdoors?
I mean, that would be my guess, right? Just to know which ones are planning to do and are registered for outdoor seating, just to help direct them toward those businesses that are ready to reopen.
I can ask about that one. I don't know if someone would say we shouldn't be advertising for specific businesses, but I don't see the harm in it right now at the top of my head, but I can ask that question.
Great, thanks, Jerome. Anybody else, any other questions from the group? I guess this is a little bit of taking advantage of having two people that are in the meetings and are closer to the information than we all are. The question is, what is the possibility or likelihood that phase 2 will come within the next 2 weeks? I know, Jerome, you have mentioned that this will be grounded in science and into public health, but I don't know if there's any kind of insight that we are trending in the right direction, that maybe we will be approaching that.
Councilman Friedson, you look like you want to answer.
Well, I'll just quickly, and then you can fill in the blanks, I think might be the best way to do this. This is a common topic of discussion that we've been having internally. Obviously, we're yielding to the public health experts to help make these determinations. The numbers are definitely trending in the right direction, which is very positive. What was shared today as phase 2 and phase 3 specifics, which we're hoping that the executive branch will be able to share starting as early next week, is what we're hearing most recently. I'll let Jerome give a more updated timeline if he's got one. He and I go back and forth teasing each other about that a little bit, but what Dr. Gales shared with us today, which I think I'm able to share publicly, is it's all based on 14-day consistent improvement of the numbers. And so we wouldn't be moving to phase 2 less than 14 days after we moved into phase 1. And we wouldn't be moving into phase 3 less than 14 days after we moved into phase 2. But the numbers would have to be consistent and hit the marks, so to speak, throughout that process. And so I think you can, if you're thinking through timelines, you should expect 14 days, to be, a minimum time frame of what you'd likely be looking at based on what's been shared publicly, and the numbers are heading in the right direction, which is a positive.
Yeah, and I'll only add to that, and thank you, Councilman, is to say that since we went into our phase 1 on June the 1st, and 14 days from that would be the 15th, I think that falls within the 2-week period from the question that was asked, if today is already on June the 5th. So the answer to that, I would say it is likely, and it is very possible, but it has to be supported by people doing what they're supposed to be doing right now, which is being safe and making sure that no unnecessary risks are taken, and that we just, again, make sure that we do our part. If we do our part, we'll get there quicker. If we don't, then it's just going to be that much longer.
Great. We have a couple of questions lined up. So Jerome, the next one is, looking forward to eventually reopening the retail component. Will there be a requirement to install plexiglass barriers as currently exist at those businesses, those essential businesses that are open now? And the question is being asked because those type of materials like the plexiglass barriers are in high demand and short supply.
So what I have seen so far is not a requirement to put those barriers up. What I have seen is in various places where they had no choice to put them up because it would have created issues, and the business went ahead and did that. So I would say if and when we get to that phase, I think our guidance should be whether or not it'll be a requirement or, a recommendation, which are, two different things. And I would say wait for that time to get that answer. The other point I would like to make is knowing that there are costs associated with reopening. There have been several different conversations in the county executive office related to how do we set up a program to help businesses pay for that new expense, because not only are you dealing with the situation of having lost revenue, but now you're dealing with a situation of someone asking you to expend more expenses before you even get back up opening. And then we know that when you do open, it'll be at a lower capacity than 100%. So that's a lot to put on a business that may not have the financial means to support it, especially after going through a crisis right now that has lasted for, almost 3 months.
Could I just add on that with the plexiglass? One thing that I am personally working on right now with Councilmember Reamer is potential for reopening grants with Economic Development Corporation and some other outside partners. It's something that we're in the early stages right now, but those are the types of questions and the type of things that we are concerned about, recognizing, as Jerome just mentioned, that these could be challenges, particularly for smaller businesses, where having to put in for a small restaurant or a small retailer, a plexiglass installation that requires somebody to come in to put it in, the PPE equipment that you need to keep replacing, et cetera, could be significant and substantial and could be an impediment for folks to be able to open. And so something we're taking a look at. Also, we're also looking at potentially leveraging some private sector expertise for businesses to be able to take advantage of in the county and kind of piggyback off of that to get some consulting services or best practices access, et cetera. And so we're, stay tuned on that, but it's something that we're looking at as well, and something that you may hear some updates on in the coming days and probably within the next 7 to 10 days.
So Andrew, while I still have you on Spotlight, the next question is in that same realm. It's about finding supplies. So a couple of people have asked questions about disinfectants, about wipes, the things that are going to be needed to keep high-touch surfaces clean. Those two are in short supply. Obviously, high demand across the board. I know the town of Kensington, and talking to our town manager, also with some of the commercial vendors that the town uses, is also having trouble locating a steady and reliable supply of disinfectants, Lysol wipes, hand sanitizer. Is there anything that the county is doing to try and either obtain all of this material, or a way that businesses can work through the county to find suppliers?
I'll let Jerome follow up on this as well, but a couple things. One, the county has helped or been part of, and I'll let Jerome explain what that means, but there's a website, mocoppe.com, which extends the same deal that the county government would have gotten or had negotiated to private businesses and nonprofits, as long as they are located in Montgomery County. And so there, that is a supply chain question and a pricing question. If you're only ordering a fraction of the numbers, you can potentially get that benefit. And so I'd encourage you to check that out. There isn't a current supply of disinfectants and PPE that the county has, but part of the thought process of the grant program would be to reflect those added costs that we are putting as requirements in terms of the disinfecting and the PPE requirements and some of the other standards for disinfecting and social distancing, to be able to help provide businesses with that ability. To me, it's kind of the next iteration of the teleworking grants. We provided teleworking grant, $2,500 grants. That program closes today, actually for reimbursements as recently as up to June 1st. And that was to help transition to teleworking. This will be to help transition to reopening. And so we are trying to figure out ways that county government can step up in modest but significant ways to be able to help businesses get back on track.
And thank you, Councilman. I'm typing the answer to a chat in there. That's the email address that was just asked for. To echo what the councilman said, he's right. The website is set up. It does give you the leveraging of the buying power of the county, but they are third-party sellers that you're going to be dealing with. You're not buying it from the county, just to be clear, but you're leveraging our relationships that we've used to prepare the county and get the county set up to move forward. And as you can imagine, touching briefly on why we may not have supplies to give, because we are in the process now of figuring out how do we reopen safely and when, and our staff are going through those time frames. And we know that we have to provide, safe materials, hand sanitizer to everyone who's coming back to work, at some point. So we're in that same process of preparing our business, the government, to reopen back to public traffic as well.
Thanks, Jerome and Andrew. The next question has to do with testing. Can you give us an update, anything you've heard from the county health officer about Dr. Gales, about how testing is progressing? And specifically, this is from a business owner who has a dance studio where social distancing, really, they need to have proximity to make their dance studio work. And so to be able to reopen, they really have to have widespread testing or a vaccine available. And so if there's anything you can share from Dr. Gales as to what he has shared publicly.
So in the conversation I've been in, Dr. Gales has repeatedly said that he's happy that our testing capacity keeps increasing. He's getting comfortable with where the numbers are going. And that comfort level, it goes back to us going from phase 1 to phase 2. So I believe that that's one of the metrics that's listed on our dashboard. I'm not 100% sure, but the answer to the question is that it is progressing. It is progressing well. He's happy with where we're going, and that should lead to us being able to transition to phase 2 in a shorter rather than longer time period.
Next question is, at what phase will gyms and fitness centers, yoga studios be able to reopen, and under what conditions?
So, unless Councilman Friedson knows this answer, I believe that, when you get to phase 2, the gyms and the fitness centers, I believe they're opening in a very limited capacity. That's the beginning of their entrance back into reopening. The fear there, of course, as you can imagine, is a small group of people going from one area to the next, and the ability to keep those areas clean as people are still moving from one area to the next. That is an area that causes a great deal of concern, but it is somewhere where we do and must recognize that we've got to ease our way into it. So I think that in phase 2, it's a limited capacity. I could be wrong, but I can double check while we, if Councilman Friedson is going to say something, I can go look and double check, or I can answer it during the next question.
Yeah, and I would just chime in quickly on that to say that the other thing that has been discussed internally is the opportunity for outdoor fitness classes and separating that out from, gym openings and the standards there, because there's obviously a different standard that the state has looked at them differently, as has DC, of up to 10 people outdoor classes with social distancing, and so that's part of the internal conversation yet. But I'm not able to share beyond that. I'll let Jerome take the lead on that one.
Yep. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So what I'm looking at, I was right. It is limited opening. 1 patron per square foot is the 1 patron per 200 square feet. Sorry. is the recommendation that we have on the table at this point in time. So again, it's not in stone, but as of what we know today, that's the path we seem to be going down.
Great. Next question is, right now we're talking about this continuum moving towards reopening businesses, but there's also concern of a potential second wave after potentially phase 2 or phase 3. If there is a second wave, what has been discussed, or do you foresee that there would be a second stay-at-home order, or do you see a potential moving down the spectrum where we begin to close businesses again in another phase?
Now, Dr. Gales and probably Dr. Fauci both would say that they can't see that far down the line, but they want to be prepared and take the necessary steps that we can right now to avoid that as much as possible. It may not be preventable. We may get to the point where, whether it's, schools and, our businesses and our government opening back on a level the best way we can, and it still happens nonetheless. I think that we all just need to be prepared for it. I'm glad that we're all talking about it now. So if we're talking about it now in June and it comes to a reality in November or October, then we should all be taking steps to, foresee that. But I don't believe that anyone at this time can say it's either definitely going to happen or not going to happen. What we're doing as a county, as a government, is that we have our various missionary leads on an economic recovery task force that we are exploring how we can best not only look at the short-term strategic action items that we can do to solve for the problems today, but look a little bit further down the road long-term and figure out how to set ourselves up for success for those challenges as well. So as a government, we're looking forward down the line, and I would, as I always would take, the worst case scenario and say, okay, if that's going to happen and that's the worst case, then how can I be best prepared? But that's what I would offer from my side. Councilman Friedson may have something else to add to that.
No, I think that's pretty much right. I think the whole goal here is to do this locally in a way that reflects what our transmission rates are and what the public health risks are, to avoid the need to open and then close again. I think it's important to note, though, that the county can only be more strict in public health guidance than the state, not less. And so if there's an issue elsewhere in the state or in other parts of the state that cause concern for the state, and the governor reinstitutes a stay-at-home order or something similar, then the county would be obliged legally to follow that, because the executive order would be the law of the land. But our goal, is to ensure that that doesn't happen. That is a big part of, what the decisions have been made up to this point. And I understand, the impact that has on a lot of businesses, but that is the whole idea of it. But it's something obviously that all of us are concerned about. And it's not just about what's happening in Montgomery County, but the recognition that people in Montgomery County go other places, and people from other places come to Montgomery County, the beach, vacation, et cetera, et cetera. And it's something that certainly our folks are monitoring on a regular basis to try to make sure that we're getting ahead of it. But, we want to do this in a gradual and responsible enough way that reflects the data and the public health risks, so that we avoid that from happening.
Great. Thanks, Andrew. Next question is around the public health emergency grants. If there's any update that can be shared on what is happening with the public health emergency grants. There's been a little bit in our chat session here of different business owners who have indicated they have applied for the PHEG grant. Some have heard back, some have not heard back. And people are just trying to figure out what is the current status of the PHEG grant, and what should they be doing if they haven't heard anything back from the county yet.
So all I will say is, if you're happy that the grants exist, the council will take credit. And if you have concerns about the implementation, I will pass that off to Mr. Fletcher and the executive branch, since that's more their side of the bargain.
He is so true, but man, he is funny. I gotta give it to him. Okay, so yes, council was gracious enough to create the program. And we developed the implementation rules around it. So the question of why haven't I heard back yet is a very good one. The reason why we have sent out thousands of award letters for those who were approved. We have done extra and more than enough due diligence to try to make sure that those who we deemed as denied, they were done properly. We have multiple people review individual applications. So we are just now at the point of requesting. We're done requesting all information that was necessary to apply and qualify for the grants. We're evaluating that information. I think it's about 300 that are left right now. So everyone who has been awarded a grant up until now has been notified, and we are in the process of getting their bank information and making those deposits. If you have not heard from the team right now for your Fair Grant application, there's still a little bit of hope in this program, because again, the final reviews are being done, and you may get an email. If you don't get an email and you do get a denial letter as they start to go out, what I don't want you to do is to lose hope that this is the last chance or the only chance that I think the county is going to provide. There's a lot of people on both sides, whether it's the county executive, Councilmember Friedson, and his colleagues. All of us recognize that one program may not be enough. We are going to have conversations about not only the recipients of those additional funds, if more funds can be identified, but some details on how those programs can be run so that we impact the most people during this process. I just don't want people to think that, this is a one and done kind of opportunity. I don't think that people should think that way at this point in time, because we know that there's been a lot that's happened since that program stopped accepting applications on April 25th. And again, it was for those who experienced a loss in the month of March. So please be patient. Once you get your contact from us, we're going to contact you either way. You will receive something from the county either way. If you've been approved, and you will get a letter. If you were denied, you're going to get a letter as well. But we've been very cautious to send out denial letters. Like I said, just making sure that we've done every piece of due diligence we could to help those who thought they should qualify.
Great, thanks, Jerome. I do want to remind people in the chat window, Jerome and Andrew have put links to county resources, the websites, some different email addresses, including the main email address for everything COVID related, which is bizinfocovid19@montgomerycountymd.gov. The next question is if you all could take a little time to help people better understand what curbside means as far as being able to do curbside shopping. Specifically, can people put out sidewalk items and sidewalk shopping so long as they're able to do contactless purchasing? But if you could help better define, especially for retail, what it means to have a curbside business.
So good question. And as far as I understand, curbside retail means that you actually have a building that faces a curb where you or your staff could come out and then provide the item being bought to the customer. It does not mean putting out different items on the sidewalk or outside of the establishment. It means truly, if they're buying it online, they can come by and pick it up. If they bought it over the phone, they can come by and pick it up. And the delivery of the item being purchased is contactless. So to me, I think that's the best way I can say it. If there's any question about that, I can try to clear it up. But it's if you, for example, if you are within a mall and you have to walk into your establishment, that's not curbside delivery. It's where they truly can come to the curb of your establishment.
Thanks, Jerome. The next question is to businesses as they reopen, what do they do if they have an employee who has already been exposed or who becomes exposed to COVID-19? What are the responsibilities of a business as far as testing other employees, as far as, and I'm taking this question and extrapolating a little bit. Do they have to close? Do they have to do a deep cleaning? So if an employee becomes the business becomes aware that one of their employees tests positive, what is the responsibility of that business?
I'm going to have to defer to the CDC guidelines on this one, because I think that, again, we as a county have to be careful that we provide the right information for people to react to. But if I start to tell businesses what to do and they do it and something goes wrong, then the liability becomes mine, because they'll say, Jerome told me to do it. So what we're encouraging people to do is, on the webpage that I showed you earlier, to the right, there's some resources for businesses, and I clicked on that. Actually, it was on the middle of the reopening page. That box that took you to those other resources, that's where a lot of those questions and scenarios are being proposed and answered. But yeah, I'll stop there.
Yeah, the only one thing that I'll add, because this comes up quite a bit for businesses, which I totally understand, is yes, businesses should follow the CDC guidance, but the person who is actually infected, that worker, is going to be in direct contact with the public health department, with our local health department, and will provide some guidance there to that particular person as well. So the question then becomes, what about the other workers who are exposed? What about the business, and the health department as part of the contact tracing also will have that understanding as well. So there have been some questions of what do you do with the infected worker who has the virus, and once you get a positive test, you'd be in touch with the health department. So I just wanted to note that.
Thanks, Andrew. So part 2 of this question is, how do employers then, what is the process, or how do you go about getting tested or getting their employees tested?
Well, other than the hospital, I think there are various sites that are providing testing throughout the county. I would have to direct you to probably our COVID page or our HHS page on our website in order to give you more guidance towards that. Actually, no one's ever asked me that question. So actually, I don't know where exactly to point them, but I can try to see if I can find it while we're talking as well. But they have to go to one of our designated sites that we call official. But let me look real quick.
Great.
Yeah,
Thanks,
just to chime in quickly, we have public testing sites and there are private testing sites. You might have heard about the CVS partnership that the governor struck. Those are expanding. There's one in Bethesda on Wisconsin Avenue. So there's different opportunities for that, and we are part of us ramping up the public side of testing with a deal that the county has recently finally struck, because it was in the works for a long time with Avigenics, is to be able to expand the capacity of testing closer to what we feel the needs are, which would allow it to be easier to be tested based on what the guidance is.
Great. And maybe while Jerome is looking up the rest of the resources, do either of you know, the county is, we have a large population of healthcare workers or people within the healthcare industry. Do you know if there are any parameters by which healthcare providers who are asymptomatic are able to be tested to ensure that they don't have COVID before going back into and providing healthcare services?
I can try to answer this. I think it's a question more specifically that probably the health department would have to answer, but the main issue here, or the main area that has been focused on, has been the outside facilities, largely the nursing homes and assisted living facilities, particularly where there are providers in those facilities. And then obviously in the hospitals, that's a capacity that had not been able to be done previously. There's been a major emphasis on that. We've been pushing really hard to try to get the focus on that. The state has provided some ability for actually the National Guard to be helping with the deployment of some of those testing capabilities and what are being referred to as GO teams in those facilities. We've been working with Dr. Gales, and I've been directly discussing with him the opportunity for some facilities that do testing on a relatively inexpensive basis, covered or uncovered in terms of insurance for the workers of these facilities. So it's not exactly up to where we would want it to be, but it's moving in that direction.
And what I found regarding testing, discuss the Wheaton Community Center as well as the Up County Regional Service Center, but that's all I could find on our website. Maybe because those are probably government facilities that actually, were offering testing at the time. But
yeah, just to clarify, Wheaton, Germantown, and White Oak, the VIP vehicle inspections are the 3 current public county sites. There are a number of private sites as well, and those are all currently by appointment only, although the testing capabilities are expanding dramatically, and we're hoping that that will expand it more broadly as well.
Great. Next question, and we just have about 2 or 3 more minutes, which lines up because I only have a couple more questions as it is. But will there be another round of funds for the Telework Assistance Program?
Great question. The answer to that is I don't think so. For teleworking specifically, the way I see it is the reopening grants that we're looking at right now are kind of the next phase of that. The teleworking grants, we're really focused on helping to transition from the normal work environment that we were in pre-COVID to a largely teleworking, working from home, stay-at-home order dynamic. Now I think the needs have changed largely from that focus of how businesses are needing to adapt, and we're going to reflect the next iteration of that program accordingly. Actually, the teleworking grant funds, as I said, are open up until the end of the day today. So if you have a pre-June 1st expenditure up to $2,500 for teleworking, make sure to get that in at the MCEDC, Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation website. But I think that the next iteration of grants like these will be similar, but focused on different issues to reflect the current moment that we're in as related to COVID and our economic recovery.
Great, thanks, Andrew. This will be the last question. As we advance and we are preparing to move from phase 1 to phase 2, again, this echoes what you started with at the beginning. It will be ground in science, starting with a 14-day trend, of which we just moved into phase 1 on June 1st. But how much forewarning do you anticipate businesses might receive so that they can be prepared to reopen and reopen timely when the county is ready to move to phase 2?
So from my standpoint on the executive side, I'm trying to communicate as much as possible. Again, that's one of the reasons for, the podcast is to keep people aware and abreast as we move forward. So it doesn't all hit everybody at the end and then you say, well, I got 3 days to prepare. Because if the data is trending towards us going into a good place, and then let's just say, for instance, the 14th day is on a Friday, and then the public health official says, yes, we're going to open up on Monday. Well, we shouldn't need to wait until we get to that Friday to know that, okay, I need to start getting prepared. You can see that coming on Tuesday or Wednesday. That, okay, look, if all things stay the same, then I see where we're going. And I think that's the sort of transparency that the doctor is trying to provide us without pigeonholing us into one particular date. Because when you pigeonhole yourself into a date, that people have the expectation that you said this date and now you're changing it, without really understanding or caring about that why the date has changed. So I think that, in my opinion, the frequency of information and communication is that much more important. But to ultimately answer the question, I think that with this last, with the first reopening, we gave 2 or 3 days. I would love to see that turn into 5 or 6 days, and that should be our goal for phase 2.
And part of getting the information of what the phases are going to look like out ahead of time will also help to prepare as well. We threw everything at everybody all at once partially because we were reacting to what the state did, and our public health officer and the executive branch, sent it over to us as quickly as they could so we could approve it. But now we're trying to take a more methodical approach, and so that's why the executive branch has sent over what they're expecting to do. We're providing some feedback now. Hopefully that will be released, we hope, early next week publicly. It will give a chance to understand it. It won't have a date associated with it, but at least it will give you an understanding of this is what's going to happen in the next phase. We can ask questions, we can prepare, and this is what's going to happen after that.
Great. With that, we'll start. Since you're on the screen right now, Councilmember Friedson, any closing remarks that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I just want to thank you all. Like I said, I started with understanding the challenging environment that we're in, and I have been amazed by how many businesses have stepped up in this moment and have adapted and adjusted to the new reality that we're in, and grateful for everything that you all are doing for our community, our residents, and we're here to help you and to serve you, recognizing that it's not always the answer that you would want. It's not always the answer that we would like, frankly, but here to help in any way we can. I put my contact information there. We're in close touch with the town, and want to thank you, Mayor Tracy and Connor, and the rest of the council for all the work that you do every day on these issues, and working with us as partners to try to get through these unprecedented time together.
Appreciate it, Andrew. Jerome, any last comments or closing remarks?
I'll just say thank you for having me. I appreciated being on. I enjoyed the exchange of information. I got some notes that I took from this conversation, and some of this will go into our frequently asked questions, because again, you're asking it, others are asking it, and I didn't have a great answer. I would love to get a better answer. We just want to make sure that we communicate as much as possible, be transparent, be timely, and be held accountable for what we do. So thanks again for the opportunity.
Jerome, we deeply, deeply appreciate it. Thank you for joining us. Last but not least, Mayor Tracy Furman, our mayor here in the town of Kensington. Any last remarks from you, Tracy?
I just want to say really thank you to Andrew Friedson and his office staff, particularly Matt Higgins. We've been working on this for a few weeks. I've been asking him to do this, and he didn't let me down. And I want to let the businesses know that Andrew is extremely, gets back to you. If you have a question, his staff is wonderful. Either Matt or Cindy will get back to you right away. If they don't know the answer, they'll do a follow-up. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Andrew's office. And I also want to thank our business group, Kensington Ken, who actually planted this idea in my head, and I was just happy to make it happen. So thank you, and to Connor for moderating, and of course to Mr. Fletcher, the Assistant Chief Administrative Officer for Mark Elridge. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Great. So I'm just going to close. I'm Connor Crimmins with the council. If you are a business within the town of Kensington, which most likely you are because that's why you're here, you probably already know most of us, whether it's Mayor Tracy or myself or Matt Hoffman, our town manager, or Carrie Ann Zentz, who helped put this all together and is our communications liaison. If you have additional questions at any time, just reach out to us. You can email the town. You can email one of us individually. We may have the resource available on the town's website, tok.md.gov, or we can point you to that resource. In the chat window, there's a number of resources that Jerome has shared, that Councilmember Friedson has shared. I've shared some of the towns. Please take advantage of that. We are also recording this session, and we will post it onto the town's website once Carrie Ann has an opportunity to clean it up a little bit. But I just want to say to our businesses who are doing everything they can to reopen, how much it means to us that you continue to fight, and whatever we can do to help you. We love our small business community, and we are going to do everything we can to help you get through from phase 1 to phase 2 and beyond. But I want to again echo Mayor Tracy. I want to thank Jerome, and I want to thank Councilmember Friedson, his office, his staff, Matt Hoffman, and Carrie Ann Zentz for helping to put this all together. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Happy Friday, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend.